Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to do a tribute to my great uncle Delbert, who was my grandmother, Flora Clemmons, his brother. And he was a big part of my life and an uncle that I loved and cherished and looked up to. And I didn't think there was anybody greater than Uncle Delbert. If he had been president of the United States, I couldn't have been more prouder of an uncle than I was of him. He was the greatest American that I ever knew, and he hung an American flag on his front porch, and he loved this country, and he was an awesome veteran. Now, I got some stuff I need to show you before we really get started, so I'm just going to get to it. Every time I went down there, he'd give me something most of the time. And he gave me these knives, and I want to show them and brag on them because I'm proud of them because my Uncle Delbert gave them to me. He gave me this boker here, and I love it. Isn't that awesome? And if you see any little rust spots or something, that's because of me. This was mint when he gave it to me. It didn't have nothing on it. And he gave me this one with the red handle. I love it. It is so beautiful. Look at that. Look at that red bone handle. Man, I feel lucky to have that. And he gave me this one also. Like I said in my other videos, I was spoiled rotten. And my parents weren't the only people that spoiled me. Uncle Delbert did a fair share of spoiling me too. He gave me a tackle box up there, and one time Aunt Sadie gave me some cactuses that she had on her back porch, and she made iced tea that was great, and all kinds of stuff. He gave me a watch, and I wore it till I just couldn't wear it no more till it ticked its last clock. That's how long I wore that sucker. So I got some pictures here too to show you before we get started. And the reason I'm doing this is if you want to see a picture that you've seen in my video, you don't have to watch the whole video. You just go right to the beginning and all my pictures will be at the beginning. So that's why I do it that way. Here's a picture of Uncle Delbert when he joined the Army, and I called and asked his daughter Bethel Lee to send me this because I couldn't find a picture of him, and she did that, and I want to give her a big shout out for helping me because she really helped me out. And right here's a picture of him with his dog, and he loved that dog. Great picture. Okay. Now, I guess I should do the ones of his wife Sadie next. Alright. This one is of Aunt Sadie and Aunt Dovey and my grandmother Flora Clemmons, and that's Myrtle and Bethel Lee is on the porch. Okay. Here's a picture of Sadie and Betsy. There's Betsy. And Betsy's their daughter. She looks as pretty now as she did back then. I always enjoyed being around Betsy. She's a good cousin. And I thought I'd show these pictures of Millard and Annis McKenna again. I showed them in another video, but this is Delbert's mom and dad. And Annis McKenna here, she was like a medicine woman. She made all of her own medicine. And they said that she was related to the Indians, and I don't know that to be a fact, but that's what's been told. And that's pretty good evidence if she knew how to make her own medicine and stuff. And here's Millard Clemmons. Millard Clemmons. Now, Uncle Delbert had a pond below his house, and he had a great big catfish in it, and he called it Flipper. And this thing, I'm not lying to you, you could throw a loaf of bread in that pond, and that Flipper catfish could swallow that whole loaf of bread by itself, just about it. And he loved that fish, and he'd go down there and throw slices of bread in there and get to come up, and we'd all see it and just marvel at how big this catfish was. Well, right here's a picture of my aunt Lulabelle. And we took her with us up there to Uncle Delbert's one time, and she caught that big catfish out of Uncle Delbert's pond. And that ain't a picture of it, that's just from some other place she caught some cats at, and that's just to show you that she was a good fisherman. And she caught Uncle Delbert's Flipper. Anyway, Uncle Delbert was born on April 14th, 1920, and he died July 20th, 1996, just 10 days before I would turn 14. I'm going to go ahead and say this now so I don't forget it. When he died, my first cousin, David Chrisman, was asked to play taps at his funeral. And I thought that was the greatest honor that he ever got, to do that. And everybody bragged on him, what a good job he did. And for whatever reason, my mom and dad took me to the visitation and the funeral, but we did not go to the cemetery and hear David play taps. And that is one of the biggest regrets of my life, which there wasn't nothing I could do about it, but I wanted to go and hear him do that so bad. And I just love Uncle Delbert, and I'm sorry I missed out on that. Well, let's get right to the stories here. In which this isn't a story, this is truth, okay? Uncle Delbert, when he was young, his parents were poor and had a hard time taking care of him and his brothers and sisters. And he went ahead and joined the CCC, which is the Civilian Conservation Corps. And when he done that, he had to lie about his age in order to get in there because he was just too young, and he was underweight and probably malnourished. And everybody in my family told me that he had to put tools and weights in his pockets in order to meet the weight requirement in order to join. And that was what was always told to me. And somewhere there exists a picture of my grandfather, Tommy Alexander, and some other guy that was in the Civilian Conservation Corps, and Uncle Delbert sitting on a tree stump where they cut down a big tree in that Civilian Conservation Corps. And Aunt Hazel had it, and I scanned it and had it on my computer, but I've went through so many computers in my life that I don't have it anymore. So, but I know it existed at one time. He served as a cook in the Army for 4 years, and then he worked for the Bluegrass Army Depot until he retired. And after he retired, he worked 8 years cutting down trees to make trails for hiking in the Daniel Boone National Forest. So Uncle Delbert was a really hard worker, worked all of his life. When he served in the Army, he served in the South Pacific, and he went as far as the island of Guam. Now, there was 2 war stories that he told to me that I can remember. One, he said he was walking through the woods with his best friend. He said it was his best friend, and a sniper in a tree shot and killed his best friend, and he turned around and pointed his gun in the direction that the bullet came from, and he shot and killed that sniper. And he said that sniper had leaves on him from head to toe, and all you could see was his eyes. And I believe that because that's how they dress. And I don't know if he was a cook the whole time he was in the Army, because seems like this next story he would have been in some combat. But he said he was under fire and running from these bullets, and he came across a hole, and he went down in that hole, and there was a dead Japanese man down in that hole, and he seen that dead Japanese guy in that hole, and he decided that he would take his chances being shot at, because he didn't want to stay in that hole with that dead Japanese guy. He got out of that hole and took off. And that's the only two stories that I remember him telling about the war. And he won some badges and medals and things, but we couldn't remember what they were for. One of them might have been for being a sharpshooter or something like that. And Uncle Delbert, he never did learn how to read, and everybody worked with him and read to him to help him get his driver's license. And I'm not ashamed at all for my Uncle Delbert because of that, because he couldn't go to school like a lot of other people have the privilege of doing, because he had to go and take care of and support his family. And when he was in the CCC and military, he sent money home to help out. And he was just a great, great uncle. And my Uncle Delbert had a knot on his head. And I asked him why he had that knot. And he always told me that him and Sadie both had an outbuilding outside their house. And Uncle Delbert's building had a lawnmower and weed eater and tools and stuff like that in it. And Aunt Sadie's building, she had all this material for making crochet doilies and blankets and whatever she was working on. It was a crafts building. Excuse me. And she fell asleep in that building and had a nightmare, and she woke up a screaming, and Uncle Delbert was asleep, and it woke him up, and he ran out there to her, and I guess it was dark, and he didn't see that the door was closed, and he ran right into that door and hit his head, and that's where that knot come from. And another story he told, he said that he was mowing the yard, and he had a push mower that would pull itself, because he had so many hillsides that you couldn't mow it with a riding lawnmower. But he did pretty good with that self-propelled push mower that he had. And he was using that underneath one of them trees, and he got into a yellow jacket's nest, and they got to chasing him and getting on him, and he ran up there to the house screaming, "Sadie, open the door! Sadie, open the door!" But she came to the door and seen them yellow jackets after him, and she wouldn't open the door. She said, "Delbert, you're on your own. I ain't letting them yellow jackets into my house." And he took off and running and ran down there and jumped into his pond with all his clothes on. And he'd tell that, and we'd get the biggest kick out of that. And seems like he told another story about a skunk that got under his porch or something, and we'd get a big kick out of that too, but I can't remember how it went. I'm trying to make sure I don't miss anything. He was too good of an uncle to miss anything. He was a member of Kirby Knob First Church of God, and he went to church there and worshipped our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and you know, he was a faithful and good witness. He called my mom Shirley Curly Joe. He called her Curly Joe when she come up there because she had curly hair. He supported products made in the United States. He loved people, and he loved all his nieces and nephews. He'd drive all the way up past Grassy Springs to visit his sisters and talk to them and find out how they were doing and loved them. And he had a barn, and he kept honeybees in that barn, and he had arthritis real bad, and he'd go up there and let them bees sting him wherever his arthritis was hurting to help him out. And he had two big hound dogs that sat on his back porch, and they had arthritis real bad too. And the only time they would get up was to go eat or drink out of their water bowls because they were crippled. They had arthritis so bad. He loved to tell jokes and loved to make people laugh. And he was just a great uncle. And I can't remember a time that I went up there that I didn't feel welcomed and loved by Uncle Delbert. And all his nieces and nephews loved going up there and seeing him. And Aunt Sadie and him had a big garden. And I remember Aunt Sadie, she used to grow great big sunflowers. And I thought that was so neat. Her garden just filled with them great big sunflowers. And she had a tree, and she grew her own strawberries around this tree. And Uncle Delbert, he liked to whittle with his knife, and that's why one of the knives he gave me has a few little marks on it, because when I first got it, I thought I was going to use it because I was so proud of it, and me and him would whittle sometimes. And I remember when he died at the funeral parlor, I took my knife and I went out in the parking lot somewhere, and I found a stick somewhere, and I sat down there on the porch of that funeral parlor, and I whittled that whole stick down to nothing and left all them shavings down there, because I wanted to whittle in memory of Uncle Delbert, and do that because I loved him. And looking back on it, I'm sure that those people that ran that funeral home didn't appreciate me leaving all them shavings on the porch like I did. But I was just 13, and I didn't think it all the way through, I guess. But I did that because I loved him, and I knew he loved doing that. Well, I'm going to get off here, and Bethel Lee, thank you for the pictures and the information, and I hope I did your dad justice, because I sure did love him. Bye.